All right, folks. Hello and welcome back to online English class. Hope you guys are doing well today. Today we're going to be finishing up OTN 5, which analyzes the third phase of Marlowe's uh, uh, pilgrimage or journey. Okay, on pages 85 through 108, we're going to be looking specifically, finishing this point about the development of the symbolic significance of the Congolese environment that Marlowe continues to immerse himself in, and as he does so, realizes or comes to terms with some of the realities that Conrad wants to communicate about the natural world to you, his reader. Okay. Before we do that, let's quickly run through the top of the week announcements. First of all, make sure that you are keeping up with your discussion grade procedure. All right. Obviously, you know the difference between authentic engagement with that and inauthentic engagement. So just make sure that your engagement is authentic. Okay. Second, you want to make sure that you are finishing up your reading for part 3 of Heart of Darkness throughout the course of this week. It's a little bit longer reading assignment. It's not that long, but you want to make sure you're breaking it up over the course of a couple of days because it's really dense stuff. And it requires you to kind of sit with it to try and understand it. All right. Aside from that, I needed you to send email confirmation of your completion of OTNs 2, 3, and 4 by Tuesday at 3 p.m. So that was yesterday. If I don't have that from you yet, then I need it. And you can get it to me. It'll just be for a standard late grade. Okay, so that's a tri-weighted homework grade. You want to make sure that you are sending me confirmation that you've completed that assignment. All right. Aside from that, you got to continue to work on your OTNs as we're just completing them in class and continuing the drafting process for the quarter 4 essay. Okay, so we're going to talk more specifically. We're going to have entire classes devoted to that drafting process in the quarter 4 essay later. But for now, okay, use what you already know about the drafting process, okay, to generate ideas about the prompt, to begin the process of laying out a central claim that answers the prompt, to begin collecting evidence and then outlining that evidence, and then finally engaging in the drafting process for that essay. Okay, so without any further ado, let's go ahead and turn our attention back to OTN 5 and continue our analysis of the meaning of this portion, this leg of Marlowe's journey. Okay, so yesterday we talked about we analyzed the significance of Marlowe's description of the Congolese environment on pages 87 through 89 and 90 and 91, and essentially the dominant impression, all in all, okay, what Conrad is communicating for us in those pages is that Marlowe is beginning to reckon with the fact that the world that he lives in, all right, the natural environment. I'm talking about the world that exists outside of your window, all of the living sentient creatures out there, everything from the bacteria to the actual beast of the field, all right, to your dog, right, your sweet dog that you're patting on the head, to the trees, all of the natural world, all sentient living things are not organized, okay? That nature is not organized or revelatory of a kind of self-evident natural law that normalizes human behavior, okay? Let me say that again. Marlowe is beginning to reckon with the fact that nature is not governed by a self-evident natural law that normalizes, that establishes norms for good and bad for human behavior, okay? So very much unlike the conventional optimistic Western worldview articulated both in the Christian religion, all right, but also with other sort of derivatives or loosely related kinds of optimistic worldviews. So think about perhaps Thomas Jefferson's worldview, his kind of Enlightenment rationalist deistic worldview, in which, all right, he would believe or assert that the world was indeed governed by certain kinds of physical and moral orders that ought to be reflected in the way that human beings behave toward one another. Okay, there's a kind of inherent value to the human person. To the way he puts it in the Declaration of Independence, which articulates some of the principles or premises that are at the heart, the very foundation of our entire civilization. Okay, like our Constitution, our law code, our society doesn't make sense if these things are not true. Ready? He believes that it is self-evident, which is to say, if you just open your eyes and are a sentient human being, that it is self-evident in nature. It is obvious in nature that human beings are inherently valuable, that they've been created equal. All right, not equally garbage, not equally nothing, not equally meaningless, but rather equally valuable, with inalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and denying those individuals the right to do so. When a government denies, when any institution or any individual denies the natural rights of of another human being to pursue their own liberty, and to pursue their own belief system and to exercise freely the things that they were created to do as a human being, then that person, that entity, that government is bad. It ought to be altered, abolished. Okay? It ought to be changed. Okay, none of those statements make sense. That entire, all of those premises and the civilization and society that is ostensibly built on those premises make sense if indeed this world, this natural world, does not have some kind of self-evident moral order that ought to be. Okay, you hear that word? Ought to be obeyed. That ought to be followed. Okay, rather, what Marlowe is increasingly coming to grips with is this pessimistic, or another word for it would be nihilistic, modernist worldview, in which, again, there is no creator, okay, but rather the world is just the result of a series of chemical reactions that produced a universe, that produced a cosmos. Okay, and that is significantly, right, different than, say, a humanist, all right, who might not believe in a creator God, all right, but let's say that they're a humanist, they're an agnostic, they don't believe in a creator God, they believe in a sort of material start of the universe. Okay, fine. But they still believe that the quote unquote human spirit, or that human life, is inherently valuable. How? I don't really know. And maybe they don't either, but they still believe it. Right? You see what I'm saying? And they still believe that it's self evident in the world. So if there is indeed no creator and no entity that is overseeing these chemical reactions, and in fact, no ideals at all, nothing that exists out here that is being revealed to us, okay, then this natural world that we live in follows only one premise. All right, and it is the premise famously articulated by the modern scientist Charles Darwin. All right, that all of life is governed by the process of survival of the fittest. Okay, and therefore pursuing power in a way that is amoral. All right, and competing with the other individuals in your life, not treating them as you quote unquote ought to treat them. All right, not treating them as if they are inherently valuable, but rather treating them as if they are equally equally lacking in inherent value as you. Right? There are no moral ideals that govern your behavior. Rather, it's an amoral pursuit, amoral, which is to say non-moral pursuit of survival. So any kind of moral order that you, the human being, the creature who is uniquely capable of moral reasoning in this world, right? The only sentient creature capable of moral reasoning, okay? Capable of thinking about concepts like good, thinking about concepts like bad, thinking about concepts like just, thinking about concepts like unjust. The only creature out there that can do that, all right, is going to do that in conflict with his natural environment constantly, because nature, the testimony of nature is that those moral ideals, that they are not inherent, that they're not natural, okay? They are synthetic. They are human. All right, so that's one of the troubling things that Marlowe's coming to grips with, and that's symbolized by the fact that this sort of bearer of the sacred fire, this bearer, this man who seems to be exceptional, who seems to live his life according to distinctly moral ideals, Kurtz, is sickened. He's sick, right? He is on the verge of death. Nature is about to kill him. All right, because he doesn't belong, right, in a world that is hostile to moral order. Okay, so these impressions are deepened and developed by the following pages. Part 2, pages 96 and 97, page 101, and page 106 through 107. So that's what we're going to look at quickly today. Okay, so if you turn in your text to page 96, I know it's kind of tricky to see on the document camera, but you can follow along with me. Of course, you can see that we're on page 96, and we're going to look at some of this underlined text right here, okay? So as Marlowe gets closer and closer to Kurtz, it seems that the natural environment, the Congo, and those who inhabit the Congo, right, the native Congolese, are actively trying to stop Marlowe from reaching Kurtz, very much in the same way that the natural world, Marlowe is beginning to believe, is hostile to the moral ideals that Kurtz embodies. Okay, so when he wakes, when he's only 8 miles away from Kurtz's station, as discussed on page 95, the sun rises and they are consumed by a white fog, very warm and clammy, and more blinding than the night. It did not shift or drive, it was just there, standing all round you like something solid, right? The drift, that the use of this second person pronoun, this direct reference to the reader and also to his audience, helps take us into this environment in which we, like Marlowe, are equally blinded as we attempt to get ever closer to a kind of morally coherent existence in a world that is the enemy of moral coherency. Okay, so the fog, right? What does the fog do? Well, it inhibits Marlowe to navigate the river. He can't see. All right, he can't reason through the best way to arrive at Kurtz. This undermines 2 really important things. Number one, Marlowe's ability to work. All right, the job that Marlowe does is he's a steamboat captain, okay? And that job is impossible for him to undertake. He can't move. He is brought to a standstill by this fog, okay? So this distinctly human desire to work meaningfully is sort of symbolically symbolically denied to Marlowe by nature itself. This desire to work, and also more emphatically to work meaningfully, to work for a reason, to work according to a value system that is true and authentically good, is undercut. It is denied to Marlowe by nature itself. Okay? Kurtz remains. Kurtz, the embodiment of a meaningful life, a morally coherent life, remains isolated from Marlowe, upriver, beyond his reach. Okay, and continuing the motif of alluding to Inferno, if you guys are really paying attention here and you got your brain switched on, right, and you're thinking back to our work on the Inferno, right, you begin to see that Conrad's pilgrimage, all right, Conrad's pilgrim, right, Marlowe, very much like Dante's pilgrim, okay, the pilgrim, as they grow ever closer to knowledge of themselves, to enlightenment, right, which is embodied by, in the Inferno, the pilgrim's final arrival in the Giudecca and final sort of embrace and recognition of the sin that Satan, this giant that is at the core of both his world and also his heart, represents. Here, Marlowe, as he goes deeper into his own heart and into the center of his own world, he is increasingly he's not able to see better. Okay, he is forced, ironically, to see worse. He can't see anything, as a matter of fact. Okay, he can't even perform his most basic duties as a man, right? A kind of mist is blocking him. But unlike the pilgrim, again, think about it. Who helps guide the pilgrim through the mist? Virgil, divinely gifted reason that has been given to the pilgrim in order to navigate through the mist and to see himself clearly and to arrive at a hopeful kind of sacred vision of the sacred fire, the stars that illuminate the night where he is going, heaven, right? Marlowe is all alone, right? All he's got is a crazy helmsman to steer his ship, all right, and a limited intellect, limited reasoning ability. He doesn't have Virgil to help guide him, who has been sent by God, divinely inspired by a call to bring him to a meaningful life. Rather, it's just him. Just the individual, just the human being, defining the meaning of his own existence by himself. All right, and what a lonely place to be here, enshrouded in this mist, surrounded by people who he either doesn't understand and actively dislikes, right, like the European pilgrims, or is completely different than and incapable of connecting to the cannibals who work with the quote unquote cannibals that he works with. Okay, so penetrating this fog, right? What penetrates the fog? Is it the voice of Virgil saying to the pilgrim, "Well, you need to get a little closer, right? Further on, take courage, take hope. We're getting to hope." Okay, nope. What penetrates this fog? Okay, is a kind of cry, a very loud cry. Okay, you guys see this piece of text? Before it stopped running with a muffled rattle, a cry, a very loud cry, as of infinite desolation, soared slowly in the opaque air. Okay, so notice the figure of speech here. Air is not opaque, but the fog, okay, makes the air incapable to be seen through. All right, sort of emphasizing, double tapping that the sense that Marlowe cannot see clearly. Okay, and what cuts through this environment that is inhibiting Marlowe to see well? Okay, well, it is this kind of auditory expression of the shared curse of all mankind. Okay, follow me. I get that that's like sounding super intense, but remember back earlier in his description of the Congo, he began to see himself as equal recipients. All men are equally recipients of a shared curse, and that shared inherited curse is that you, the human being, uniquely capable of moral reasoning, inhabit a world that actively is hostile to that attempt to reason morally. Okay? You live in a world governed by an amoral principle. Okay? That survival is the only natural end of life. And this reality, though it is unifying and equalizing, all right, is simultaneously what? Dehumanizing, stripping human beings, unique among living creatures as morally reflective, of satisfying moral reflection. Okay, do you get that? Let me just say that one more time. Let me try to say it just the exact same way. Okay, so the reality that Marlowe is confronted with is he is immersed further into this fog that ironically helps him see and hear and know the reality of the world that he lives in, is that all human beings are unified and equal, but simultaneously dehumanized, as they are stripped, right, of their, even though they are unique among living creatures as those who are morally reflective, they're stripped of their ability to arrive at satisfactory moral reflections. Okay, those moral reflections are not self-evident in their natural environment, much different than, say, Thomas Jefferson would assert, or the average Western individual would assert. Okay, so Significantly, right? Think about this is yet again another allusion to the inferno, as we have this auditory image, not of clear, meaningful language, okay, but rather of a kind of beastly cry of infinite desolation or grief. Okay, that's a kind of auditory image that Dante uses all throughout the course of the Inferno in order to illustrate the dehumanizing effects of sin. But here, right, Marlowe is not depicting these individuals as sinners per se, because there is no sin to be done in a world without moral order, but rather all of this mournful uproar, all of this is simply symbolic of the way in which the tool of reflection and conscious judgment, right? What is the tool of reflection and conscious judgment? How do you arrive at conscientious judgments and thoughtful, conscious analysis of the environment in which you live? Huh? How do you do it? Oh, language, words, right? So the tool of conscientious reflection and judgment, which only human beings are capable of producing, right? Language. Only human beings are capable of using language. I'm not talking about like a parrot or like the fact that my dog knows what the word car means. Okay, you want to get in the car? My dog's like, yes, I love the word car. Good things happen when the word car is said. Okay, we go cool places. All right, that dog is not capable of using language the way that a human being is capable of using language in order to create sentences, in order to meditate on abstract realities, in order to imagine things that we do not have direct sensory experience of. That's what makes you different than an animal. Okay, and this tool that makes you distinctly capable of that kind of reflection, all right, is traded for a scream. And that scream is followed by a kind of clamor, a kind of mournful uproar, emphasizing both the unity of Marlowe and all those on the banks. They are unified as shared inheritors of this curse, and also as shared inheritors of that curse, right? They are going to mourn together, and then guess what? They're going to attack each other, right? They're going to attack each other. They're going to try and kill each other. Okay, hence the attack that follows and is narrated on page 101, 106, and 107. Now, significantly on page 101, just a quick note, right? We get this paragraph in which Marlowe reasons through why he didn't think that they were going to attack. Okay, they're not going to attack. Guess what? Even Conrad gives us that paragraph of Marlowe reasoning through why they're not going to get attacked, to emphasize that Marlowe's reasoning, unlike the Pilgrims, divinely inspired gift of Virgil's reasoning that leads him to the light. Marlowe's reasoning leads him to false belief. He's wrong. Just simply, he's wrong. They do get attacked, and people die. Notably, the helmsman, the guy who steers the ship, who's in charge of turning the wheel of the steamship that Marlowe captains. And all of this, okay, as Marlowe narrates the death of the helmsman on page 106, all right, ultimately what leads to Marlowe's deepest despair whenever they're attacked, whenever he is confronted with the reality that the world that he lives in is ultimately hostile to the pursuit of moral cohesion. All right, he comes to the conclusion, and the most devastating conclusion that he comes to is that Kurtz is dead. That this man that I was hoping to have a conversation with, this man that I was hoping to emulate, this man who lived a life that seemed different than the rest of all of this chaos, okay, from the people that inhabit this world and the world itself, something that defied all of that moral incoherency, the man who did that has been overcome. He has been killed. Okay, this disgusts Marlowe. Okay, this makes Marlowe despair. In fact, he gets so upset at this point in the narrative that he breaks away from the frame narrative. All right, and we're going to be studying the broken frame in the next couple days. But the most basic articulation of Marlowe's sorrow, his existential sorrow. Okay, it's not just like, oh man, Kurtz is dead, or oh man, my socks have blood on them, or something like that, or oh no, the helmsman died. Although Marlowe's callous response to the helmsman's death speaks its own volumes about Marlowe's state of mind. But ultimately, the thing that Marlowe is most concerned about is the fact that he is not going to get to speak with Kurtz. And this makes him feel that he has been robbed of a belief, that he has missed his destiny in life. Okay, that destiny being arriving at some kind of morally coherent existence through his own work, through the sweat of his brow, and his own wit. All right. So at this point in the narrative, Marlowe thinks Kurtz is dead. He is very wrong. Kurtz is not dead. In fact, ironically, it was Kurtz that ordered the attack. What does all of this mean? It certainly is not without its meaning. We'll be talking about that in the days to come. Hope you guys have an excellent day.